Hey, deserving listeners, it's time to continue our journey watching Paul and Karine on 90 Day Fiancé. My name is Dr. Kirk Honda. I'm a therapist and a professor. Let's see if anything of interest comes out of my face. Hey, quick disclaimer here. I recorded this episode before I learned about the terrible allegations against Paul's behavior, so just keep that in mind.
I've been gone for months, and now I'm finally here. Did you miss me?
Eu estou fora há meses e finalmente estou aqui. Você está com saudades de mim?
If you really miss me, why are you always on your phone talking to other people?
Se você realmente sente falta de mim, porque você sempre em seu telefone falando.
So, there is nothing wrong with being hurt about someone being on the phone and feeling like they don't really care about you. How do you communicate that? Well, there are different levels. Say the worst level is you're always on the phone, there's something wrong with you. So really just being aggressive with that. Mid-level is kind of what he's saying is, well, if you say you miss me, why are you on the phone all the time? Okay. And then people don't usually think about it this way, but that's a passive statement because it's not really getting at what you're truly feeling. The most healthy way to say this is to say, so when I see you on your phone, it makes me wonder if you really love me. I'm guessing you do love me, but when you're on your phone, it hurts my feelings because it makes me feel like you're not really interested in being with me. So that's taking responsibility for your behavior, and it's getting to the heart of the matter. A lot of people will fight about this very topic. You're always on your phone. How come you're always on your phone? You're always looking at your phone. And it ends up being about the phone, and it ends up being about what they're doing on the phone, instead of being about the core of the issue, which is someone is feeling hurt and neglected. If you just say that, then people tend to rise to the occasion because they're not being accused. Whereas I've seen couples, even on the show, they'll get into real micro arguments about, when we're together, you can't be on your phone. And the person's like, why? Why can't I be on my phone? So the way that he communicated it was sort of that mid-level. Now, the mid-level can be misinterpreted or it can be interpreted accurately. Let's see what happens.
While I've been gone, I found out Karine has been flirting with other American guys online. It's just really upsetting to me.
Qual o problema?
What's the problem?
I noticed a lot of flirtatious comments on a guy's named Joe's page.
Eu sei que é monte de comentários. A página de Joey.
I don't know who this guy is. He's American. I see these shirtless pictures, and it's just concerning. Why is she even talking to these guys like that?
Yeah, makes sense. So let's see how they manage this conversation.
Não está acontecendo nada, Paul. Ele apenas é meu amigo e me ajuda com alguns exercícios em casa.
Nothing is happening to him. Just my friend and help me with some exercises at home.
Okay. So what's that about? No, what's that about? What are those emojis? I haven't seen Karine in months, and there's no telling what she's been doing behind my back.
So he's getting a little upset. She has an explanation of, no, he's just helping me with exercises, which is fine. But now he's starting to show emojis that she is using of kissy heart faces kind of thing. And that can mean a lot of different things. It could just mean you're just being friendly. It could also mean you're flirting. So, let's see how they manage this conversation.
I really hope Karine hasn't cheated on me while I've been in the United States. I have a lot of concerns with all the things I've seen online. Would you mind taking another pregnancy test?
Eu tenho muitas.
Okay, so Paul is doing a similar thing that Big Ed was doing, which is having normal feelings of fear of rejection, fear of abandonment, fear of being dumped, hurt that the person isn't sensitive to your feelings. Totally normal, totally justified. Most boyfriends, if they saw a kissy emoji on someone else's page from their fiancé, they would be hurt and they'd be afraid to some extent. Not everyone, but to some extent. What do we do with those feelings? Well, we can communicate those from that I position I was role modeling earlier. We could also get angry. We could also make her take a pregnancy test because, funneling all of your hopes and dreams into a pregnancy test is is not likely to get to the heart of the matter. What you're hoping for is that she clarifies, is she really in love solely with him? Does she consider his feelings throughout the day? Does she, and then another thing you'd want to know as a fiancé is, does she have the capacity to care about my feelings? Am I realizing an aspect of her personality right now that I didn't see earlier? Because I'm wondering that, because the emojis, they're emojis, but they were pretty flirtatious. There was a lot of examples, particularly with this one person. And most fiancés would say, I probably shouldn't put that emoji. In fact, I probably shouldn't put anything underneath this guy's photos. Sure, he's helping me with working out, but I probably shouldn't, encourage or compliment his body, particularly if my fiancé is going to see that. Most of us would understand that would hurt our fiancé's feelings. Not everyone, but it'd be predicted, right? And so we would refrain from that kind of behavior. So what does it say about her personality that is doing that? Maybe for her, emojis are a dime a dozen, and she just throws emojis out there, and it doesn't mean anything to her. Or maybe she is legitimately flirting. Or maybe she doesn't even know that she can hurt other people's feelings. So this is interesting, and maybe we'll get some more data.
Preocupações. Você se importaria de fazer outro teste de gravidez?
É super exagero que ele faz. Achar que talvez eu seja safada.
Right. So he goes from normal concern of, I don't like you, what looks to be flirting. I don't know if it is flirting from you, but it looks like flirting and it hurts my feelings. He goes from that, which I think most of us could get behind, depending on how we felt about it. Most of us could get behind. He goes from that to, I need you to get a pregnancy test. So not only is that an accusation that she's had sex with other people, but that she's also pregnant with someone else's child. I mean, that is quite an accusation and could really be hurtful, right? So I wonder what's going on there for Paul. The first thing that popped into my head was Paul has a lot of anxiety, and one of the ways that he copes with it, apparently, is through a lot of medical help. He brings with him all these devices for anti-malaria and water cleaning systems and clothing and nets. He's when he gets anxious, he tries to solve his anxiety through, might we say, technology, through medicine, which isn't a bad move. If you're worried about getting malaria, then getting a mosquito net is a rational way of managing one's anxiety and a rational way of behaving. I wonder, though, if now we're seeing that defense blossoming into other areas that don't make a lot of sense. I'm worried that my fiancé doesn't really love me. I'm worried that she's cheating on me. Well, I'm going to look to a technology, medical-based solution, which is a pregnancy test. If I get her to take a pregnancy test, then I'll know that everything is fine. But would he actually feel that way in the end? Probably not, right? Because it doesn't really address anything. Say she takes the pregnancy test, it turns out she's not pregnant, which is likely, and she can go back to using these emojis with this guy. So this is interesting. Let's continue watching.
Como é a última vez que ele veio.
That's not good.
Não tenho medo de fazer teste.
Pode abrir.
Right, so he did it before. The first time it seemed rational, right? When you get together with someone, it's totally rational to exchange STI tests. He didn't come prepared with his own STI test. He required it from her, and then later had his own STI test that he presented to her. So the first time I thought, well, you're asking someone to get an STI test, no big deal. But then he also tacked on this pregnancy test, back then I thought was kind of interesting too, because it's like, well, what does it tell you? I mean, I suppose if she's pregnant and it turns out to be someone else's child, then you're like, oh, okay, well, now I know. Now, he has traumas in the past that he's talked about being cheated on. And so maybe she even got pregnant in the past. And so this is his way of making sure the past isn't repeated. I don't know. But it is kind of interesting. By the way, all these videos should not be considered a replacement for therapy. If you need therapy, get a therapist. You deserve it. Let's move on.
You messaged me no? Por quê? Hã? Por quê?
A gente tá casando e eu acho que ele nunca vai confiar em mim. Eu me sinto brava, bastante brava.
Right. So she's angry, she's hurt, and she's saying, no, I'm not going to take a pregnancy test. What is going on right now? So makes sense. Now, hopefully Paul can reassess and say, okay, well, wait a second. What's going on with me right now? How can I communicate it in a functional way? You know, get back to basics. Hopefully they can.
Karine, por quê?
Quer chorar e às vezes você se pergunta se você tem que ficar realmente com essa pessoa que não confia em você.
So this is how normal feelings dealt with in a defensive manner cause the problem that you're worried about. So at the beginning of this moment, there was a lot of reasons to believe that Karine still loved him and wanted to be with him, but maybe she has this problem with flirting a little bit. That was all the evidence we had. And he didn't speak from his heart. He didn't speak from his attachment injury. He was accusatory, got angry, and then asked for this pregnancy test, which is a communication of, I don't trust you, I think you're a terrible person, all these kinds of accusations. And now she is saying no, and she walks off. So you're seeing a little hint of rejection, and then your defenses kick in, which make her actually reject you. This is a frequent thing that people engage in that is so-called self-destructive and just continues to plague people over and over and over again. For Paul and people in his position, this feels very rejecting. It's like, oh, there she goes rejecting me again. She probably did have sex with someone else. That's why she's not agreeing to take the pregnancy test. I can't trust people. I'm not lovable. You know, another example of how I can't trust people. Another example of how I am not inherently lovable. And then the next relationship, even more sensitive to those jealousies and even more reason to be defensive around it and even more likelihood that your next person is going to reject you. This is what early childhood mistreatment, early relational traumas will set in motion. The original abandonment or the original abuse or the original mistreatment is compounded by adult repetition of those behaviors that are facilitated by the individual's defenses.
It's my first day back in Brazil with Karine, and things are just not going well. Since me and Karine have been apart, some big trust issues have developed in our relationship. She's been talking to other American men on social media. She's being what I consider flirtatious. So I've confronted Karine about my concerns, and she just brushes it off and just says, we're just friends, don't worry about it. I notice a lot.
Right, so she kind of did blow it off. She kind of did brush it off. But he didn't give her enough chance to really realize in her heart the way it was affecting him. That's what some people will do. They will hear, oh, my partner is jealous and is hurt, seemingly, or angry at what I was doing online. Well, what do I do about it? How do I cope with that? Because I don't want to lose my partner. So maybe if I just act like it's totally chill and no big deal, the other person will realize that there's nothing to hide here and I'm not doing what they think I'm doing. And by giving off that very lackadaisical vibe, it can sometimes blow up in your face. And I wonder if that's what Karine is doing. We don't know much about Karine and her inner world because they don't interview her very often, and we don't have a lot of contact with that. So I'm having a hard time coming up with why she would have done what she had done. And I'm not even quite sure if it's a terrible thing, because she could say something like, oh, no, I'm very liberal with my kissy face emojis with everyone. I put it on, women's pages and men's. That's just how I am, and I'm not flirting. Maybe that's the case. So we just need to know more information.
A lot of flirtatious comments. What's that about? No, what's that about?
Qual o problema?
What's the problem?
I have a lot of concerns with all things I've seen online. Would you mind taking another pregnancy test? Seeing my fiance flirt online with other men definitely makes me feel very uncomfortable, and it raises a lot of red flags. I've lost a lot of sleep over thinking about whether or not she's cheating on me or not. I had an ex-girlfriend in the past, and she never told me that she was actually pregnant with somebody else's kid.
Right. I seem to remember that now in the previous season that he actually had that very exact trauma of his previous partner cheating and getting pregnant, and then him finding out about it, and then it really crushed him, as he says. So, that's rough. I'm guessing he hasn't been to enough therapy to heal and to grieve that difficulty. And when you have wounds that are left festering, then it's going to affect your trust level in future relationships.
And it really crushed me. Made me a little paranoid in some ways.
Eu voltei pro hotel porque
But he does admit that it makes him paranoid in some way. So there is some insight there into, well, maybe I'm taking it a little too far. So let's see if he can actually apologize for asking her to get a pregnancy test because she had a kissy face emoji on Instagram.
eu fiquei chateada. Eu sou noiva dele, então pedindo um teste de gravidez é só bobagem. Eu me sinto muito ofendida agora.
She's not gonna take this well at all. But I went ahead and I picked up a pregnancy test. It's definitely a little bit extreme for me as my fiance taking a pregnancy test, but it'll definitely put my mind at ease.
Right. So that's what he's trying to do. He has a lot of anxiety, and his general solutions to anxiety have to do with medical procedures. Maybe when he was young, he had some sort of health scare that medicine helped him with, or some kind of technology helped him with. It's hard to know. And because not everyone on this, even on this show, who have exhibited this kind of worry about their flirting fiancés would find a pregnancy test to be the solution. Because again, just logically, if you look at it, the fact that she's not pregnant does not mean she's not flirting. The fact that if she does, demonstrate that she's not pregnant, which is likely, that doesn't demonstrate she hasn't even, she could have had sex and be using contraception. So the fact that she's not pregnant shouldn't alleviate your anxiety, but maybe it is just helpful to him for some reason. And maybe it's functional on some level. Maybe for Karine, it's just like, okay, fine. If you want me to take this pregnancy test and then we can move forward, then I'll do that for you. And I guess it would make some sense now that I'm speaking out loud about it, because that's a very specific trauma for him. Is she pregnant? Has someone got her pregnant? Maybe that's even more important to him than her cheating on him because of the traumas that he's had in the past. Because that's a pretty big deal, right? To not only your partner cheating on you, but that she's pregnant with someone else's child. That would have a lot of meaning for some people. And so maybe that is the dominant worry for him. It's not so much that she's flirting. It's not so much that she's potentially cheating. It's just that she could have someone else's child and, growing inside of her, and I wouldn't know about it. I don't know. I'm sort of completely speculating and guessing at this point. So I don't know. It's interesting. Now, what I would want him to do in this moment, if he's trying to actually have a good relationship, is to slow his roll and to come up to her and say, I'm sorry that I asked you to take a pregnancy test. I can imagine how that must have made you feel. I imagine that it was very hurtful, very accusatory, and I was wrong to do that. Let me return to basics. I have, in my past, had, I've been hurt, and I have this paranoia that you're going to do the same thing to me. And when I saw those emojis, it triggered that paranoia. That's not fair to put onto you, but it is something of a reality for me. And can we please work together on that problem? That you'll hear me talk about this a lot. what I'm always trying to do in couples therapy is, instead of having people at odds, him saying, I need you to take a pregnancy test, and she's like, no, I'm not going to do it. Instead, let's define the problem in a way that both people can fight the problem together. They can both externalize the problem instead of internalize it. So a way to have a narrative of externalization is for Paul to say something like, I have this problem that was imposed on me from previous traumas, and us as a couple, we both basically have to deal with the fact that I have this trauma. So let's work together on attacking this trauma, because this isn't your fault. And it's not really my fault either that I have these issues, because it was imposed on me. It's damage that happened to me. I didn't choose this trauma. And so let's work together to combat it. And here's my plan, is reassure me that you love me. Could you not flirt with people, or could you not do these kinds of emojis on Instagram? Because that will really help me. You're telling me that you're not flirting. Could you please just really show me that you're not flirting? In fact, I would prefer that you don't even communicate with this guy, unless you can really demonstrate to me that he's a good friend and that you actually have a connection. Like, I don't want you communicating with him at all in a lot of ways, because that'll trigger me. But what do you think? How do you want to work on this? How do you want to have a relationship with that guy? Let's problem solve this together. We were both on the same team. We both want a strong relationship. We both want me not having triggered traumas coming up from the past. We both want to not have bad times and conflict times. So let's be on the same team together. Let's work on it together. When you can get to that place, then everything goes well, because you're on the same team. You're not accusing each other. You both have power. You're approaching it in a rational way. And so, I don't know. I don't imagine they're going to do that, but let's see what happens.
Considering what happened with my ex-girlfriend.
Você tá sugerindo que eu tive outro homem?
So you're suggesting that I've had sex with other men?
So, right. So Paul is exhibiting a seemingly lack of awareness of what's happening right here. For him to say what I've been saying of, when I saw those emojis, it worried me. Of course, I have no reason to believe you've had sex with anyone. I have no reason to believe you're pregnant with anyone's child. But that's my paranoia, and so could you take this pregnancy test? He's undifferentiated. You hear me talk about differentiation. So this is a lack of differentiation moment where his traumas are causing a knee-jerk emotional reaction of, she's pregnant, okay? Given his traumas, it's understandable. Oh my God, what if she's pregnant? What if she cheated on me? Makes sense. That's fine. That's an emotional reaction. But if you're differentiated, you have the ability to differentiate between that emotional reactivity and your rational thinking mind, which would tell if you could, fused individual, undifferentiated individuals will confuse their emotional reactivity for their intellectual mind. People who have differentiation are able to say, well, let's look at this more logically. Is it likely that she's cheated on me? Not really. And if she has, is it likely that she's pregnant? Even if she did cheat on me, would she be pregnant? Probably not. So logically, I understand that it's not rational to be that convinced of the possibility that she's pregnant. It's also not helpful to accuse her of that. It's not helpful, what is it going to do for me to make her take a pregnancy test? But I still have these feelings, and these are real feelings. I don't deny these feelings. These feelings are real, and how do I help myself with that? Well, let me use my intellect to figure out how to help my emotions. Well, maybe if I really ask her questions about how much she loves me, or is she flirting, because sometimes people flirt, even people who are married, sometimes people who are or engaged, sometimes it's hard to give up your flirtatious side. And you don't really mean anything by it when you're being flirty, but it's a hard habit to break, or something like, maybe that's what's going on. Maybe I'm seeing a little bit of that. Let's talk about that instead of telling her to take a pregnancy test, and then she says, so are you saying you think that I'm pregnant with someone else's child, that I've had sex with other people? And then he says, yeah, basically, yeah, I do think that that happened. So let's rewatch that.
So you're suggesting that I've had sex with other men?
Por que você não confia em mim?
Why do not you trust me?
I've been away for 5 months. I know it's my concern, my problem, not yours. Will you please take this test to settle any and all doubts one last time?
Você fará este teste para resolver.
So it looks like this is a very narrowly focused defense to alleviate his anxiety that he really is locked in on at the expense of his relationship, really. Now, full disclosure, I've talked with Paul not that long ago. It was just two humans talking to each other. He's not a client of mine. And I was just offering some education around mental disorders and trauma. He had a lot of questions, and we talked for a long time, and he told me a lot of details. And I know where this relationship ends up according to his narrative. And some of these issues that they're arguing about right now blossom into bigger issues later. But at this point, there's no reason to believe, unless Paul has other things that he isn't saying on the show, he has no reason to believe that she's cheated or that she's pregnant. So that's what I'll say about that.
Resolver todas as dúvidas uma última vez.
Quando o Paul age dessa forma, ele fica com uma atitude de mesquinho, um homem inseguro. Tudo bem, eu vou fazer esse teste.
It's okay, I'm going to do this test.
Obrigado.
Eu vou fazer e você é um grande idiota.
Okay, so she's taking it really well. She did this last time too, where she playfully says, you're being a butthead, and I don't like what you're doing, but fine, I'll take this stupid test. And then we can move on with her life. She's exhibiting a lot of maturity here. A lot of people would be like, no, this is just not going to happen. You're insulting, you're mean, and I'm not going to give in to your stupidity. But she is saying, okay, fine, I'll take the test. I don't like it, and I'm going to give you a playful tap with the box, and then we can move on with our day. So, I commend her for going along with it. Now, what I would want is either one of them or both of them to say, okay, now that you've taken the test, we have to revisit all the things here, the emojis, my insecurities. How do I communicate that? How can we feel more bonded so that I don't have these worries? A lot of these couples on the show, or all of them, they never have that conversation. They just, okay, fine, pregnancy test, now everything's fine. And there's this fantasy that somehow this issue isn't going to come up again, which it likely will. I don't know if it will.
I mean, I really love her. And if she is pregnant with someone else's child, I don't know how I'm going to react. Oh, this is really awkward.
Sorry.
I think she's joking because she's a jokester. So I'm guessing I hope she's joking. She's joking, right?
I'm sorry.
All right. There's a really light thing there. Not sure what it is.
You understand?
No entiendo. Pregunta? Niño? Niño? Niño. Not my niño.
So under some circumstances, I might say this is a cruel joke, but I don't know. I feel like if you're Karine, you're thinking, okay, fine, I'll take this dumb test, but I'm going to play a little prank on you, and we're going to make light of this. But I don't know. If she lets this go on a little too far, I think it is a little cruel.
Eu não tô grávida. Não. Não.
No niño.
Não, ninho.
No niño.
Eu não estou grávida. Não estou
I'm not
grávida. Entendeu?
Entendo. I'm very sorry for all the mistrust. I'm really going to try to start trusting you more.
Realmente vou tentar começar a confiar mais em você.
So they're right back to where they started. So this is a very common thing that's hard to watch is there's these incursions, there's a conflict, and then there's an apology and this statement of like, I'm never going to do it again. You said that before. Why would you think it's not going to happen again if you've said that before? You said that same phrase where I'm never going to do that again, and then it happened again, and then you should think, okay, well, I want to say it's never going to happen again. I'd like to think it's never going to happen again, but I said that last time, and I'm guessing he might even have previous iterations of this in the past with other romantic relationships. So I wish people would say, maybe I need to go to therapy, or maybe I need to dig down deep and figure out what's going on with my personality that causes this repetitive pattern.
After being cheated on so many times in the past, it scars you. It definitely scars you. I still have different lingering doubts that are festering. But I'm really hoping and praying that maybe I'm just being paranoid. Desculpa. Karine's parents are traveling to Manaus tomorrow.
All right, well, that does it for that episode of Psychology in Seattle. Thanks for joining me out there. Please take care of yourself because you deserve it. You really, really do.